It's time to find out what's cooking. Here now is the head chef of the Pemberton Township Food Service Program and your host, Tim Paroli.
Hello, welcome once again to another edition of What's Cooking. I'm Tim Paroli. Today we're going to teach you folks at home how you can prepare some commercial food items that you've only purchased at a restaurant. We're going to show you some tricks of the trade that are going to make these foods very easy for you to make at home. We've even shrunk down some of the amounts so that it's very easy for a family of four, after watching our program, to take a crack at some of these different items. We like to incorporate a basic food principle in with our menu. Today we're going to show you how to make a chicken pot pie. And the basic principle that we're going to be giving you is how to make a pie crust. Because the pot pie has a pie crust on top, this is going to be the same pie crust or same pie dough that you would use whether you were making a fruit pie or a meat-filled pie like we're doing today. The difference in what we're doing today, if you've watched other shows, is that today I'm going to be using some already prepared cooked chicken meat. It's a leftover. And we're going to be using a little bit of milk and flour and butter, and we're going to be making a cream sauce out of that. We're going to flavor it with the chicken meat, diced onions, carrots, and celery. And our pie crust is a very simple 3-2-1 pie crust. And the 3-2-1 is in the order that you see on your screen. You're going to use 3 cups of flour, 2 cups of fat, and a cup of water. So the first thing that we want to do is begin to prepare our sauce. And what you're going to use for that is a heavy saucepan. Now, what we're looking for is a saucepan that is very thick and very heavy. Remember, whenever you're using anything that's got flour, milk, or butter in it, and today we have all three, you want to make sure that you have a nice heavy pot. Thick, a bimetal is even a little better if you don't have a thick type of aluminum pot. And a bimetal is usually a stainless steel liner with an aluminum or copper bottom. And what we're going to do are a couple things at once, because I know you've been watching the program and you want me to move just a little bit faster. So what we're going to do is start you off with our sauce. And what is going to happen here is we're going to use about 2 tablespoons of butter. And that goes in the pot first. We're going to melt that down. And what we're making in the bottom of this pot is our thickener. And that is what is going to thicken the sauce that goes around our chicken. So we're going to melt our butter in there. And once that has melted, I'm going to add to that an equal amount of flour right in this pot. So while I'm waiting for that to melt, we're going to get our vegetables ready. And we're using fresh vegetables today. We're using carrots and celery and onions. And they're the basic three. We use them in most of our stews and soups. But if you've noticed, you might have put these together and they didn't all come out done at the same time. We're going to show you today how something like a carrot that takes a long time to cook and a celery that cooks rather quickly, we're going to change the cut on them, and you're going to see that we can get them all done at the same time. The first thing that we want to do is take off the large end of our celery, our carrot rather, and take off that tiny end. And now, most of us, when we're working with a knife, we have trouble because a carrot is very hard and it's going to roll around. All I want you to do is put the knife anywhere on top of that carrot and give it a little hit. It doesn't have to be exactly in half. Just cut right through that. And it's still rocking. However, if you notice, we turn them over on the flat side and now they're not moving. Now they're very safe and they're going to be very easy for us to cut. And when we're going to dice any vegetable, one key point you want to remember is to make your long cuts first. So the length of the carrot, we're going to make as many of those cuts as we can. So I'm going to cut that into strips that are only about 1/4 of an inch wide. Then I'm going to turn those strips over and make sure that the strips that I now have are no wider than that. So we go for about 1/4 of an inch, turn them over, and we cut those fat ones so that they're small. Now we have our celery, our carrot, already in long, thin strips, and now we're going to just cut that again as wide as I made those long cuts. I made those cuts 1/4 of an inch wide, and that's all we're going to do right here, is cut them nice and small. There you go. And at no time do my fingers leave my hand, which is what you want to remember when using a large knife. Keep your thumb and fingertips bent away from the blade so that you don't have any extra added ingredients in your sauce. All right, the butter has melted down real nice. And what I want to tell you, because I have a lot of people say, gee, you know, when you put your sauces together, and this is commercially, the only thing that we'll measure out is the butter. Flour is a variable. The humidity in the house will change how much moisture flour will absorb. So you can measure the butter out, and that will be pretty consistent. But the flour will always be different. So we put in just enough flour to suck up the butter and to make that give us the appearance of a wet sand on the bottom of our saucepan. And we have that right now. Now, I told you at the top of the program that we're going to make a pot pie, and if you have never eaten them, since it's chicken, it's very light. So we want to cook this roux now, is what this is called, a roux, or thickener, but we don't want to brown it. So we want that to cook for a few minutes. And while I'm going to let that cook for a few minutes, we're going to let these carrots get a head start right in there with that. Now remember, the only liquid that will be going in here will be from the carrots, because right now we have flour and fat in there, and that temperature will go much higher than if we were just to boil them. So we've already raised our temperature. Now the celery, we know, is going to cook a lot faster, so we can cut that one time down the middle, and then we can take that and make them just a little fatter. So these will go at about 1/2 inch. All right, so we've got that cut, and that can go in there. Now I'm not going to stir that because I want the heat to only cook the vegetables that are on the bottom right now, and that is the carrots. I've got more carrots in there than celery because I want some color. The chicken's kind of a brown and light color, and it's kind of flat, so we want to add some eye appeal and color to this dish so that when you cut into the pie, it's not just all the same color. Now we have an onion, and this is a very good example of when I tell you the root end of an onion, which is down here, or the stalk end of an onion. This one happens to have the stalk on it. So we're going to just take off both ends of that. We trim off the root end of the onion nice and thin. We don't take a whole lot off. Then we're going to take off that stalk end, and we're going to turn it over and cut that little root button right in half. And now I've got 1/2 an onion that I can use, and we just peel that right down. And take off any of that thin, papery looking onion, because it will never cook. It won't get tender. Make sure that that 1/2 an onion is all trimmed up, and that you've taken and gotten rid of all the peels off your board. Now, we're going to cut the onion, since it's already in layers because of the way the onion grows. We're laying the onion with the root button away from me, and we're going to cut 1/2 inch slices in that onion without going all the way through. All right, now I'm going to turn the onion, and this is the end I didn't cut, so we're still not going to cut that, and we're going to go 1/2 inch again. And that's plenty of onion right there. All right, now that onion isn't going to take a whole lot of time. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to stir our vegetables, and I'm going to bring these over to the board so you can get a real good look in here of what this roux will look like and exactly what you should be seeing at home. Take a look in the bottom of this pot, and you will see that we have that flour mixture is all around, and it's covering all the vegetables. All right, and it's not sticking to the bottom because we kept the fire nice and low. Now we're going to turn up the fire. So we're stepping up the heat, and I'm going to stir in some milk to this. Now the milk goes right in, and I want to make sure that we loosen this, all that little bits of the vegetable and the flour mixture off the bottom of the pot. And we want to get it off of the sides, and I want to give this small circles when I start with just a spoon so that I break that up real good and get that mixed And now once I have that accomplished, we're going to put in the rest of our vegetables. And we're going to let this come to a boil. I'm going to add the chicken to it. And remember that this sauce, what we're actually making here is a pie filling. So all I want to do is have the sauce hold these ingredients together. I don't want it to be a whole lot of sauce. So we're going to add enough chicken to this so that it just about, the sauce covers it. A generous covering of the sauce is what we'd like. And then we're going to just keep an eye on this, and I'll give this a stir from time to time. And that's going to be our filling for our pot pie. Now we're going to set up and show you how to make a pie crust. Now most people overdo it when they make a pie crust. Now what I want to show you that you need for the pie crust is very simple. All you need is a mixing bowl, your pie pans, and as I told you at the top of our program, a 3-2-1 batch of ingredients. I've got 3 cups of flour here. Now normally when we work commercially for pie dough, we would weigh out, we would do this by weight. However, in a small batch like this, this works fine. We've tried this several times and it works out great. So be accurate when you measure and you won't have a problem with working on the pie crust. Then we're going to, counting backwards, we're going to put in 2 cups of any kind of fat. But you don't want butter because the butter has too much water in it. Butter has a lot of milk left in it. If you've ever melted it down, that liquid on the bottom is milk. So we don't want to add any extra water to the pie crust. So our fat goes in, and we're going to put the 2nd cup in there. And I've found the reason why the weights are so much more accurate is because we don't always fill the bottom of the measuring cup, or we don't always take the time to level it, or what looks like a cup to you may not be a cup in a larger measure. So when you're measuring something like shortening, a single cup measure like this is really easy to use because you just fill it level and you've got it. And there's no mistakes. You don't have to worry about it looking level or not. Anyway, in that goes. Now, what we're going to show you today is called a pastry method. I have over here 1 cup of cold water. A lot of people like to use ice. Before I get my hands all messy, I'm going to just give this sauce a quick stir because that should thicken. Yep, and it is. That'll thicken by the time we're ready to roll here. We'll be filling a pie and showing you how nice that looks. So this is already thickened up. I'm going to lower the fire on this so that I don't have to tend to it while we're making the pie crust for you. So I lower the fire, and that is about ready, our pie filling. And it's got a nice color, nice fresh contrast of colors in it. All right, so we take our mixture, and what we're going to do is mix in the flour with the fat. Now just watch what I'm doing here because I'm going to break up the shortening is what we're using today, the fat that we're using today. The shortening that we're using, we're going to break it up in here. And we're not going to mix this to the point that we have, I want to be able to see the difference in the shortening and the flour. We're going to mix this till we get what looks like the size of peas in there. All right, so we mix that without the water. And once you have it looking like that, there should be lumps of shortening in here, but you don't want them any larger. And now here comes the part that everybody always messes up their pie crust on. Dump the water in there, and we're only going to mix this just till it comes together. We don't want this to be a smooth looking dough. Even though it's called a pie dough, it's really a pastry dough, and it's very, very coarse and rough. And this is how it should look. And now this is ready to be rolled out. So while I clear myself a board and make sure that I have my pie pans and everything all ready so that when we come back from a break, I'm going to show you how to put together a delicious pie. So while I'm doing this, I hope you folks at home will watch this. Welcome back. What we're doing now is getting set up for the second part of our menu, and I have on the board here some flour, and I have our dough that we showed you how to make. And you can see it's very rough and very coarse looking. We just pick out a piece of that about the size of a tennis ball, pat that lightly, and onto the board it goes, onto the floured board. And then we're going to pat a little more flour right on that. And then so that you learn how to roll out a dough, put a little mark in the middle like that. You're going to go from the middle of this mark out. We're not going to go back and forth, from the middle and out. So we're going to roll that crust just like that. Right from that middle till we get it even. All right? Once you have that rolled out, we're going to take, we know that it's big enough because that's the size we're going to use. We're going to take some of our filling, and we're going to fill this deep pan. Now we're going to fold this pie crust in half right on itself, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is cut 3 little notches in it, or vents, and that's just to let the steam escape. And I'm going to pick that up and lay those little marks exactly halfway on that little pie tin. Then I flip that pie crust back over just like that, and I'm going to press it right onto the pie tin and spin it with my hands, and it's going to cut itself right off just like that. So we've cut that little pie tin, and that's going to go right into our oven. Now whenever you're baking a pastry, you want to make sure that you have the oven on high. When I tell you you're going to bake something, you're going to go at least 350 degrees in an oven. However, you can go as high as 400 degrees with a pie crust. Now remember, we're making this up fresh, so it's going in hot, and the pie crust is nice and warm. So it all goes into the oven, nice and warm, and all we want to do is heat that up sufficiently enough to brown the pie crust. Once that pie crust is brown, since the entire filling went in, is already cooked, we're all set, and there's going to be no problem with that. So I'd like to move my pie dough out of the way because I'll have to make more of those later. Incidentally, as I told you at the top of the program, the pot pie is a very nice way to use a leftover. Excellent way, because the chicken from the night before is now hidden in a pie crust, so it looks completely different. So even though it's a leftover, you've completely changed the appearance of that, and that's what we want to do. So what I'm getting ready for now, because a lot of times people go, yeah, pot pie's good, but what am I going to serve with it? Boy, have we got the answer for that. We're going to show you how to make a spinach salad with a hot bacon vinaigrette dressing. I mean, it's a mouthful to say, but it's even a lot better to eat. All you're going to need for this is some oil, some vinegar, some fresh mushrooms, and spinach. And I'm going to show you how to get them ready, and we're going to use a little bacon. Now, what I was stirring when we returned at the second half here was I took a little bit of bacon and I cut it up, threw it in a saute pan, and this has been rendering or cooking, and we're removing the fat from that. Now, if you're on a fat diet, be careful with this. Don't eat this too often. All right, so this is our bowl that we're going to use. I'm going to make this all in one bowl once I have my ingredients ready. So here's how I get them ready. The first thing we have are mushrooms, fresh mushrooms and some water. I've got them in a deep container, twice the size of the mushrooms, and I'm going to put cold water on the mushrooms, enough to sufficiently float the mushrooms. I want the mushrooms floating in 2 or 3 inches of cold water. Then we're going to take a large container and we're going to put some of our leaf spinach in there. Now, I'm going to just bounce this spinach in this water a little bit, and any sand that's in there will go to the bottom of this bucket. So our spinach is already cleaned up, and that's over there. The mushrooms, we're going to bounce them now that they've sat a little bit, and any of the heavy sediment is going to go right to the bottom. And you'll see the mushrooms will just lighten right up once you've washed them. And pick them right out of the top. Continue bouncing them and pick them right out, off the top. Incidentally, if you've had breakfast and you've got the bacon left over, this is a great time to use it up. Well, you can tell economic times are tough. Okay, so we've gotten that out of the way. Now we're going to get our vegetables all ready to go. All I want to do is show you this bacon. It's right now, it's beginning to brown. That's what I want. And it's got the fat in the pan. That's what I want also. So we've got that bacon crisping up really nice. And I'm going to keep that nice and hot, spread out in the pan. And it's picking up some good color, and it's really got a wonderful aroma to it. Now I'm going to move all these mushrooms to one side. And what we're going to do, since we're going to eat these just the way they are, we're going to take these and cut these nice and thin. If you're going to ever cook a mushroom, you want to cut them a little fatter than what I've got here. Because when you cook a mushroom, since it's about 80% water, it's going to really shrink and fall down to nothing. But these are going to stay the same size because we're only going to treat these with a little bit of the dressing. So we have a nice pile of mushrooms here. And these real little guys, we're going to leave them whole. All right, spinach is ready. We're going to set up our dressing. Now we're going to start in the dressing with a little bit of white pepper and a little bit of dry mustard. Now that's pretty hot stuff, so that's where all of our pepper is going to come from. Some salt. And then we're going to put some vinegar in there. And then we're going to just mix that. Hear that? It'll be real crunchy sounding when you first stir it. I like to mix the vinegar in with all the spices and the salt so that we dissolve them in the vinegar. If you put them in the oil, they don't always dissolve. There, it should smooth right out. And then we're just going to whip in a little bit of oil. And that'll pick up its own little bit of body, just like that. And that's what it should look like. And then we put in the mushrooms right in the bottom. And we're going to make sure we get them tossed all around so that the vinaigrette mostly gets in and around and over the mushroom cuts. So we have them all full of the vinaigrette because we want that flavor in on the mushrooms first. Then we're going to lift out our washed spinach. Now I'm putting in almost the whole bag of the spinach here that we had. And this salad, when you make it, has to be set up. You can set it up just the way we did because right now this would be okay to put in the refrigerator and keep because the mushroom is the only thing that's in the acid on the bottom, so these leaves won't wilt. However, we do want this salad to wilt, and we want it to wilt right before we serve it. So what we do is take our hot bacon and the hot fat, and that goes right across the top of that. And that's going to wilt the spinach, and it's going to make them fall. And then we're going to toss that all together. And this salad, when you serve it, even though these were in cold water, they're already warmed up from that hot bacon. So we've got a lovely salad that will really set off our pot pie. I'm going to get a plate so we can set that up, and you can take a look at how that's going to be. Make sure I got this all tossed. That should all have a nice shine to it. Because we're adding such a hot dressing to that, just like any other green vegetable, it's going to intensify the color only for a few minutes. Now we've got a crust that's bubbled up on the pot pie. Bring that over without dropping it. I got that made. And when we do pot pies commercially, if we want them to be really, really dark on the top, what we'll do with the pot pie is before we put them in the oven is we'll brush them with a little beaten egg mixture, and that will make them brown up, and they'll really get real brown. It's kind of an artificial brown look to it. And our salad. So if you're going to have leftovers and you want a different way to use them with a different type of salad that's going to be really healthy for you, I'd like to recommend to you our wilted spinach salad with a bacon vinaigrette served alongside of our pot pie. You've got your bread, your meat, your vegetable, and your salad, and it didn't take you all evening to make it. This is Tim Paroli for What's Cooking. Thank you for watching.